Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the Crash and Ride podcast. I'm Patrick Ferguson. I'll be your host. Today we're talking to Faiz Razi from Chicago, Illinois about Imposter Syndrome. Faiz is the singer. Let me get my notes out here because Faiz is in an amazing number of bands. Faiz sings for Small Awesome, Faiz Zeppelin. He was in the band Danger Adventure and the Rooster Davis Trio. Also sings for the bands Tourism and The Hype. He is the creator of the website nobodycaresaboutyourstupidartproject.com. He's on the faculty at Northwestern University, holds a BA in education from DePaul, and a master's in interdisciplinary art from Columbia. And oddly, with all those qualifications, he still suffers from imposter syndrome. So we're going to talk about that. And also about his identity as a culturally Muslim, mostly agnostic guy living in America in 2019. So I think it was a really great interview, and I hope you enjoy it. I'm really excited about the feedback I've gotten on the 3 episodes we've already put up. I've had a lot of positive emails, and I've had some comments, on the Patreon page, and we've got a handful of Patreon subscribers, and we've had a couple of donations made through our PayPal, which is crashandride@protonmail.com. I feel like we're doing important work. I feel like we're handling it well so far. I want to keep doing this. Crash and Ride is now available through all of the major podcast distribution platforms. So now you can use the Apple Podcast client or the Google Podcast client or Stitcher or whatever you normally use to listen to podcasts to listen to each week's episode or to search for past episodes. However, if you want to sign up to do the monthly donation via Patreon, you have to go to the Patreon page. Just go to patreon.com and search for the Crash and Ride podcast. One thing I really want to do, I want to create a list of community mental health resources for artists and musicians in different cities. There's one in Austin called HAM, H-A-A-M. There's one in Athens called Nucci Space. If there's something like that in your town, can you email us at crashandride@protonmail.com? Also, if you have any questions or comments, or you want maybe a referral of some kind, if I can maybe help you find resources in your community, please feel free to reach out. That email address is encrypted. It is confidential. Nobody checks it but me. And I promise you I won't violate your anonymity in any way. Also, I have some shows coming up. I would love to see people come out and say hi, shake my hand, let's talk. I've got a show April 4th in Athens at World Famous with the Japanese rock band Pinky Doodle Poodle, who I think are a really extraordinary show. I hope you'll come see them. That same band is playing April 6th in Birmingham at the Nick, Birmingham, Alabama. And then I have a run of dates April 11th, 12th, and 13th, where both the band 5/8, who I play drums for, and the band Pinky Doodle Poodle, who I play drums for, are playing shows. So I've got 3 days in a row where I'm playing 2 sets a night, and this is not low energy rock. So I'm going to be taking my vitamins and maybe getting some exercise between now and then to prepare. The first show, April 11th in Augusta at the Soul Bar. Pinky Doodle Poodle is opening for 5/8. Same thing the next night in St. Petersburg, Florida at a club called The Bends. That's a 3-band night. There's another band on that bill, but I'll still be playing 2 sets. And then the following night, April 13th in Gainesville, Florida at High Dive, I'll be doing 2 sets, Pinky Doodle Poodle and 5/8. You guys keep sending your emails. Keep sharing the podcast with people. So far, the response has been extraordinary. I'm super stoked about it, and I'm really grateful for people reaching out. I've done interviews the last few days with some people who I really admire, and I'll be putting those out over the next few weeks. I'm thinking about maybe going to 2 episodes a week. I would love some feedback on that. If you think a 75 to 90-minute podcast 2 times a week is too much, I might agree with you. It's hard to shorten these interviews down, though, because we're really getting into some elemental and important stuff. But, yeah, let's talk about that, and let me know what you think. I can continue to do 1 a week, or we can do 2 a week, or I want to work with you guys, the listeners, and find out what's best for you. That said, I think it's time to jump into our interview with Faiz Razi. Okay, we're here with Faiz Razi, singer of many amazing bands, Small Awesome, Danger Adventure, Faiz Zeppelin, also Rooster Davis Trio, Tourism, and The Hype, holder of a BA from the DePaul College of Education, and also a master's from Columbia College in Interdisciplinary Art. He's also the founder of the website nobodycaresaboutyourstupidartproject.com. Faiz, that's a lot of stuff, man.
It's a lot of stuff. There's more. You were you were kind in your editing.
Yeah. I mean, so today's show is about imposter syndrome. It's a special crash and ride, sort of single topic interview, but I mean, it's kind of amazing that someone with that many things on their resume would be like, "Hey, I feel unqualified."
Well, I mean, I guess there's I've been thinking about it a lot this week, since we were kind of planning this, just to kind of get my head around it and be at least mentally prepared. I'm
Yeah.
doing this. There's no notes in front of me. It's just it shows up in a lot of different ways. It's almost like there are like three types. When I talked to you about this, and your gut response was like, "Are you sure you're qualified for this?" And and
That was less of a gut response and more of an intentional joke.
well, the funny thing is that my wife, my lovely wife, said the exact same thing, and
Hilarious.
my first thoughts were A, I've got them fooled, and B, do I have imposter syndrome about having imposter syndrome? And
Yeah.
I had to think about it. I had to think about it. And a few years ago, I was at an event at my friend Tim Midget's house, and we were
Mhm.
having a conversation. And he asked me, he's like, "Do you have imposter syndrome?" And he wasn't being a dick about it or anything. He's just a very astute dude, and it was the first time that it had ever come up. And I thought about it for like a brief moment. I was just like, yeah. And so in this week of kind of unpacking all of this and kind of trying to figure out, why I feel like a fraud, for lack of a better phrase,
Mhm.
um, is it shows up in three different ways. One is the creative type. Two is cultural, as I'm like, usually, for, independent rock music, it's all white dudes. And
Yeah.
so as an other, it feels, as not being a white dude, it comes in there. And then thirdly, there's like a little bit of just like familial stuff.
Mhm.
I'm not a doctor, I'm not an engineer. My parents are both highly educated. My dad's a
Mhm.
retired nuclear engineer, mom's a badass VP. Um, and I didn't go the route that is usually expected. And so
Right.
it shows up in different ways, and there are different things that kind of trigger it, but it's all just kind of there. It's a general
Right.
dissatisfaction, but also just like, well, what else am I going to do?
Right. So let's take a second to lay out both some terms and kind of let people know who you really are beyond your resume.
Mhm.
Um, so, so what does imposter syndrome mean to you?
Um, I think in a lot of ways it's a general unease or dissatisfaction with the work that you do, and whether that's creative work or work. You feel like you're kind of pulling one over. Like generally speaking, don't feel like I feel that I am here by luck as opposed to by skill. And I
Uh-huh.
feel that way most times. I've said for years I've never been in a band without a musician that's better than me, which is A, true, but B, it's kind of weirdly self-effacing because I regularly disavow my own talent,
Yeah.
as like a
Yeah.
a safety mechanism.
Hmm.
Um, and so, I mean, I constantly feel um, like I'm fooling everybody. Like
Hmm.
I couldn't possibly know how to do all of this stuff.
I've
And,
also heard people describe imposter syndrome as feeling like that discovery is imminent and that will all come crashing down.
oh man, yeah, it is, and I don't know where it really stems from, but it's like I've been teaching for 27 years this May,
Uh-huh.
and my entire job like hinges on me being like a day ahead of everyone else.
Right.
And so, like you just don't want them to ask the question that outs you as a fraud.
Right. So if you have a particularly gifted student, you have to figure out a way to have him kidnapped or something.
Pretty much,
Yeah, just
yeah.
yeah, I get it.
And so, I mean, it's in the creative industry, like, industry in the sense that like I make a bunch of stuff,
Right.
in that sort of thing, I'm less bothered by it. I think I have more problems with it when it's like work, because music is play and being creative is play, and
Right.
I inherently trust my collaborators, um, to be cool to work with. And so that's usually not where it comes up or where it stems. It's usually more about, I don't know, work, but it comes there too. I have an almost utter and complete dissatisfaction with my music until I get that weird, like, that weird childish, like, oh, this is good, like it's
Yeah.
it's like the lowest level of flattery.
I don't hate this.
Yeah. This definitely sucks a lot less than the last thing you sent me.
So let's talk a little bit about the cultural identity thing that sort of seems to be part of, as you mentioned, is the second sort of type of imposter syndrome you feel. Your family's from South India.
Correct. South Central.
Yeah. Um,
Yay.
and you where were you born?
I was born in Seattle.
Yeah.
My parents moved here in mid to late 70s, because my dad had a decent gig, I think working for the government on like I think on like missiles. I'm not even kidding. Like
Literal rocket scientist then.
yeah, yeah, right. My dad's a nuclear engineer, and so
Right.
this is one of the ways that it kind of played out. And so my brother and I are both first generation, and there's something, I don't know, there's something particularly unique. I mean, I guess to me compared to my peer group, about that sort of interaction.
Right. So you were born into an Indian Muslim family, but in many ways you're totally culturally American.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure.
Um, but you and I have talked about this some in the past. You maintain some practices, and you and I have both sort of been astonished that some of our like kind of less nimble-minded peers. I mean, I guess I could use the word dumbasses. Kind of freak out when they find out you're celebrating some of the Muslim holidays like
Yes.
Ramadan or Eid.
I essentially try to celebrate them all. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like when people are culturally Catholic,
Uh-huh.
you
Or
know,
culturally anything.
or culturally anything. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there's something nice about fasting. I don't do it as much as I'd like to, but also I like eating. So
Yeah.
this is um yeah, there's something to that sort of sense of belonging that
Right.
kind of happens when I mean, I don't know, for lack of a better phrase, you fake it. I mean,
Right.
it's like I you just want to be around when everyone is around. Everyone's in a good mood.
Hmm.
Everyone's enjoying their holidays, and so you're just like, well, I'm gonna do that too. I mean,
Well, and as you pointed out one time in a discussion that I was a part of, when someone was like, there was this was sort of during the mid 2000s hysteria about Islam in the United States, and somebody was like, I can't believe you celebrate these Muslim holidays when Islam is such a like dark ages religion, and like you were like, you celebrate Christmas, you dumbass. You say that you're an atheist, and yet you're going to have someone chops down a conifer and puts it in your living room, and you're okay with that, like
right.
you know. But yeah, so you're culturally Muslim, and you observe the holidays, but in every other aspect of your life, you're agnostic at least,
Yeah,
and
and
not religious really.
and the funny thing is that like I feel like I pass everywhere except the airport. Like
Well, yeah, it's a special time, man. Like
right.
before 9/11, you passed at the airport too, I'm guessing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Enough so. Enough
Yeah,
so.
but we've got this like this 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 cultural antagonism right now that is maintained by a certain segment of the population, an interest in maintaining power. So you're one of the people who gets caught up in the gears of that.
Sure, but I mean, for the last, decade and change, if like, I don't know, if black people can have like a better time at the airport than they normally did for like a good 30, 40 years,
Yeah.
I'll take it. I'll take
Yeah,
it.
but
Whatever,
how
man.
many times have you been randomly searched?
I've randomly been searched approximately 17 times.
Yeah. It's amazing.
It's so random.
So, in spite of, the fact that you're a rocker dude and, you know, I we've spent a lot of time together and the cultural differences are absolutely minimal. Sort of knowing at the back of your mind, especially in the last few years, there's this kind of sense that like, I don't belong here.
Yeah. Oh, always. I mean,
Yeah.
it always is. Like, I mean, when I'm a funny dude, generally speaking, and
Yeah.
I sometimes feel that when I'm joking around at like a rock and roll show with, a bunch of white folk, which is great. They're my fucking friends. They're my peers. Whatever. There's this weird lingering thing in the back of my head. It was like, am I shucking and jiving over here? Like, am I putting on a show? And I think that there's a disconnect between the the performative nature of being funny,
Hmm.
in a group full of people, and then just being like, am I just eating up all the air in this room? Like, what is going on? What am I doing? What am I getting out of this? What am I pushing onto other people? And I feel
Uh-huh.
that, um, I mean, I have a big enough ego that I'll ride it out,
Right. Sure.
see where the joke is going to go.
But I
But
guess it sounds to me like you're having some questions just about the authenticity of your experience having like a foot in both worlds. And you're sort of asking yourself, am I doing a disservice to my heritage and my culture by
correct.
cracking jokes with people who may not fully get the humanity of where you're at?
Yeah, and when I was thinking about it this week, I was thinking about this point in high school. Okay,
Hmm.
all the brown kids hung out together. They had lunch
Hmm.
together. They had they did things together and stuff like that. And I kind of didn't connect with them either because in a lot of ways I am unlike a lot of the Indian people that live in this country. When I find my friend Diru is this Indian dude that plays noise guitar, and I haven't seen him in years, but I'm just like, I get that guy. Like
Yeah.
I get that guy. We don't have to talk for a very long time. But back to the high school thing, they were being this friend of mine, Noor, she's a lovely lady.
Hmm.
Um, she was inviting me to a thing, that all the other brown kids were going to. She's like, "Hey, we'd like you to come along, even though we don't consider you part of the group." And it's this tiny little thing. And she's a high school kid. I'm a high school kid. You say
Yeah.
all my high school things, but it's actually kind of stuck with me.
Huh.
Whereas I'm definitely not a white guy, even though
Right.
culturally I am.
Right.
Because Indian people are the whitest of the brown people as far as, as far as it
I
goes.
mean, if Nikki Haley can pass uh, with this like crowd of absolute race fascists that she's passing with, I guess
Sure.
that yeah, an argument could be made.
Sure. And so like I don't feel connected to that either. My cousins love them as I do. They're all wonderful people. All of them and their friends, they think I'm kind of weird. I mean, we
Yeah.
get along, but there's a weird like middle ground for all of it where I don't feel that there's this sense of belonging, and um I feel that my cover could get blown in either direction.
Yeah. So I'm a little slow on the uptake because I'm thinking we've sort of covered all three of the types of imposter syndrome that you've described now. Like, there's this feeling of being an imposter as far as your qualifications for the art and or the work that you're doing, but also feeling like you might be discovered as not being a truly authentic American, but also feeling that you might be discovered as a not truly an authentic Indian
Yeah.
or
Oh,
Muslim.
totally.
Wow, that's a lot.
Well,
Um, but also like, I mean, you've compensated in many ways for it by like creating this enormous body of work.
yes.
Uh, And you know, there's at least two educational institutions that have decided that it's worth the risk to give you a degree.
Yeah.
And you've been teaching. You're a tutor at a private school on the north side, right?
I teach math and English to kids. I've been doing that. I've been running a math and reading center for 27 years. I got it. The week after I got my driver's license, I started teaching.
Hmm.
But I also teach at Northwestern University. I teach design to people in the Master School of Communication that like don't have a design background. I teach them how to make logos, business cards, websites, portfolios, like that sort of, professional design, just to kind of give them
Yeah.
a crash course in that. And then there's all sorts of freelance stuff that shows up. I moderated a panel on booking a tour earlier this week. I'm here on lovely Crash and Ride.
Right.
And I helped some friends start producing a record the weekend before, and then that's woven into all of the teaching that I did this week, all of the design work that I did for the university. And I don't know. I mean, I, I think I keep the demon at bay by being insanely busy. Like
When
I'm
did it
much.
start though? Like was that conversation with Noor in high school? Was that kind of the beginning of the sort of like, oh, holy shit, I don't really fit here, is the way I thought I did, or did it start before that?
I don't know. I mean, like, I can't remember the first time I got called a camel jockey or a sand nigger by a white kid. I don't remember if it was before or after, but it was kind of during,
Yeah. Was that
and
and that was sort of a constant feature of your high school experience?
sure. In high school, junior high, grade school. I mean, I went to a Catholic grade school, so I went to church all week and then went to a Muslim Sunday school. So it was just like a constant, like, I know a lot of hymns, like
Right.
like a lot.
Yeah.
Like second and third verses, like I got those all down.
Yeah.
Um and part of it was my parents sent me to Catholic grade school because of colonialism. Like
Yeah.
in India, because of colonialism, which that's a whole other thing to unpack.
Yeah.
The schools that were good were Catholic schools, and those were put in by the English or the British. And for us, there's a certain amount of assimilation that has to be done. I mean, you can't, I have a an uncle who's crazy religious. I mean, like, he's great. I love him. I think that he's a righteous dude, but he has locked himself off, but he lives here, you
Where's he live?
know?
Lives in Chicago?
Yes, Chicago suburbs.
Yeah.
But he's super smart and he's super sweet and he's super kind, but he just doesn't want, like, he doesn't he won't take uh, a loan for interest because
Right.
interest is considered haram.
Right. It's
Like to that degree, like all of those things. He doesn't come to a lot of like the family parties that my families throw because he doesn't hang around women. And he has his wife, my mom's sister, is hilarious.
yeah.
She's hilarious. She's so crazily funny, and their three kids, two daughters and one son. They're wonderful people, and he's a wonderful person too. But he's just kind of shut off, and I
Did
think
this
that
Was he always like this, or was this a late life thing?
it's kind of like a middle one. Like, I remember seeing old like Super 8 footage. Like, that's how, like that's how long ago it was. Like 8 millimeter, like, the little 8 millimeter film reels that you load them
Sure.
up in the projectors and stuff like that. And I remember seeing him in like, 70s shorts, like dancing and stuff like that. And he would never do that now.
Right.
And so I don't know what flipped for him. I think in a lot of ways you always want to fit in. You always want to fit in with your community, whatever
Right.
whatever community that is. And even by closing himself off, my uncle essentially does fit in with his own community. Like, he
Right.
has peers and he has friends, and he's comfortable with that smaller amount of human interaction because it works for him. I mean, it's at least manageable. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm out in the weeds, like flailing and freewheeling around.
Right.
Because I have a much larger social group. I'm more connected to the rest of the world, I guess. And that puts you at odds with like that puts you at odds with other people's political beliefs, where you hang out in company that I don't know, voted for this awful president and think he's doing a great job, and with one hand they're just like, they're handing you a meal that they cooked for you, and on the other hand they're voting against your interests personally. And it's
Yeah.
so hard not to take that personal. It's so hard not to just be like, want to like shake them.
Right. Well,
And
I mean, I find that sort of like, I live in the South, so I see that all the time, and I realize that the people are just like, they're fully isolated from from brown people altogether.
Yes.
Because we're still living with the 400 years of racial injustice in this part of the country, and I see like evidence of it every day.
Sure.
What I consider to be the original sin of the United States. But like, I think, but even more infuriating to me is the sort of liberal anti-Muslim Bill Maher type, who are like, well,
Yeah.
I remember that discussion we were talking about Ramadan once, and somebody was like, well, I just think all religion is bullshit, and I don't think you should celebrate Ramadan. And it's like, so I accept you as Faiz the American, but Faiz the culturally Islamic person I reject. And it's just
totally.
like, holy shit, man. Really?
And that adds to it. Like, that adds to it. That stuff actually, as much as I'm like, fuck that guy, it eats at me. Like,
Yeah.
it does. It does eat at me. And the funny thing is that guy that you're talking about, funnily enough, he grew up a little. I'm not going to speak down at him, even though I probably should, but he wrote me and apologized for being such a prick for years. He did. And so, he and I are cool. We're cool. I mean, like, sometimes that's all it takes is just like, yeah, I wasn't super nice. Like, I've been I know this is hard to believe, but I've been a dick to people before.
What?
I know. Everybody out there in podcast land better be sitting down. But I think that acknowledging that is, I don't know, it's bold. I mean, and it shouldn't be. It should be normal and human. But like, it really, in its own weird, like, low wattage way, kind of eat at me for like, I don't know, almost a decade.
Wow.
But I'm so used to it. Like, I'm so used to it. We were Beth, my wife, and I, we were at a Mexican restaurant. We were going to get this is really exciting, I know. We were going to get a new faucet for the kitchen.
Yeah.
Okay. Hang on. We go and grab some food at the Mexican restaurant, and there's this guy sitting there, and we're sitting here, and there's a mixed race couple, black woman, white man. The brown lady that runs it, my wife and I, who are a mixed race couple. She's white, I am not. And then this guy that looks like Rodney Dangerfield's less successful brother. Right. And he, under his breath, but clearly to the room, was like, "Oh, who let the Ayatollah in here?" And I'm just like, dude, A, what year is this joke coming from? And B, there's no way that you're saying that is funny. Like, if you and I, Patrick, you and I ran into each other and you're like, dude, Ayatollah, what's up? Because my beard is burly right now. Yeah. I would get the joke because you and I are peers. We have a long history of you and I. Yeah. We've done time in the trenches. Like, you're my family, And I could take the exact same joke from you, but then when I hear it in public, you're just like, what am I going to do now? Like, is this guy carrying? Do I ask him, "Pardon me, sir"? Do you want to say it to the rest of the room? So that we can all hear how stupid you are? Why would you be that ignorant? And instead you swallow it. You swallow it.
In a Mexican restaurant.
in a Mexican
Right.
restaurant.
It's like you're not at the Norsky Nook up there in the Dells in
Right,
Wisconsin. You know,
right,
you're
right.
like you're in the restaurant of another culture under siege right now.
Correct.
And this guy feels completely comfortable blowing off. Like it seems unbelievable to me because I just can't imagine the gall of someone saying like no one would ever say anything like that to me because
No,
I'm a white dude and I'm
right.
Southern
You're
and
also kind of a bruiser, Patrick. I feel
I'm not a
safer walking
sweetheart.
around with you.
Um, but I'm also like a middle-aged white guy who's also very likely someone to be like down here that would be like, oh, that guy's probably carrying. And
Sure.
so I'm just the
It happens
astonished.
all the time. It
You
happens
know,
all the time in
I,
lots of different ways, and it's a reminder that you do not belong. It is like a reminder. I forget all the time. Like I don't, I mean, in a lot of ways I don't care, but I get reminded all the time in clearly unfriendly ways.
yeah,
You know, I mean,
yeah,
I studied I studied martial arts for years. I got I got my black belt. I literally spent the last 2 years of that getting my ass handed to me by a bunch of second degree black belt Aurora cops who were the rest of the class. So like I
yeah,
but part of this is reading the room. You learn the subtlety of reading the room in your training. And I have
mhm,
avoided every single fight that has hoved my way because I essentially don't want to, but I can tell. Like there's you can tell that there's a vibe in a room. You go to a place that you've been to, 50 times if you've been there once, and there's a new guy that you've never seen and he's giving you the stink eye. And it's just like, dude, please stop staring at me. I'm just trying to eat a cheeseburger.
yeah,
Like, and it's so ever present
yeah,
that I'm always on like like I'm kind of generally speaking I'm kind of a hermit because after you know after they voted the sentient swastika made of Cheetos into office.
right,
um it got uncomfortable. Like we live in a relatively safe part of Chicago. It's a bucolic suburban wonderland in the middle of the city. We all have like yards and stuff like that. It's kind of weird.
yeah,
It's wonderful, but there is a convenience store, bodega, convenience store, whatever you want to call it, block and a half north. We go there all the time. These people
yep,
are an Indian family. They have a bunch of stuff. Well, after he voted, like literally the next day, they now buzz you in because they started getting shit essentially the week of. And it's this weird like empowerment to kind of start bullying people, because oh, this is America, love it or get. I don't know why they have Southern accents up here in my story. I
yeah.
apologize.
That's
Um,
okay. I'm not
uh,
offended.
yeah, good, 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 good.
Yeah,
But it's a place that I had been going to at that point for 6 years. This is my
mhm,
corner store, and
right.
all of a sudden now we get buzzed in, we get buzzed in, we get buzzed in, we get buzzed in, and that weirds me out. They used to be able to keep the doors unlocked, and now they can't.
Mhm. So you've had a long career kind of in indie rock in Chicago,
Oh
right?
yeah, I've made tens of dollars.
Right. Yeah. That's hundreds of dollars a year. Yeah. But you used to do booking
hmm Yeah,
and
I was a book.
you've had a zillion bands. And so, Gen X people, we tend to think of ourselves as being really progressive without actually ever examining those values, a la Bill Maher.
Sure.
But did you find that, the '90s when you were sort of starting your career as an indie rock guy, were you othered then? And has it gotten worse lately?
I think that part of it is just like that the music scene, for independent rock and roll, is largely white, and it's largely white guys, and it's largely white guys in black t-shirts, and it's
Yeah.
largely white guys in black t-shirts with glasses. Like, I mean, maybe I'm stereotyping, but I'm
I'm
really
about, to,
not.
I'm about to send you a cell phone photo of me sitting here in my black t-shirt and glasses.
I'm wearing a pink t-shirt. I dressed up for
Yeah.
the occasion.
Okay.
um, um, but the it, you know It wasn't as much. Like I don't know, maybe I was less aware at the time. Bear in mind when I was in Danger Adventure, my bandmate Caroline, she got all the other stuff. Like when we would play with bands, she plays, she played three keyboards, sings like a demon, knows how to set up her own shit. If they needed to borrow a keyboard amp, they'd ask either John or I. They'd push her aside. They'd like physically move her aside. And so I don't know if I got any of the weird race stuff, um, because there was a girl in the band.
Yeah.
And so I think that that kind of was there, but I think that the weird thing is that there's this, everyone pats themselves on the back for being super inclusive, but the landscape of this milieu that I am in is still just white dudes. And it's cool. Like, I mean, whatever. They're interested in it. Like Indian people, like, I don't know, dance music more. So I guess if
Right.
I wanted to run into more, brown people, I'd go and I'd wear a shiny shirt and I'd shave my beard into some impossible shape,
Yeah.
and go do that. But that's not what gets me going.
Right.
And it's weird, you know,
Oops.
being the it's odd being the, I don't know, the brown guy, but I guess that's just how it is.
Well, it seems to me that your coping mechanism, certainly since the turn of the millennium, has been to just do more work.
Kick ass. That's my coping mechanism, is like, it's just
Right.
kick the shit out of it.
Right. But I mean, are there moments where like the level of frustration and despair you feel uh is do you ever get just paralyzed or anxious to the point where you can't keep going?
I haven't played music in probably since September. I
In
haven't
public, you mean?
it just at home. I haven't, I mean, aside from a few things here and there, I haven't played music. I haven't picked up a guitar. I haven't played a single thing. And um, I kind of am embracing it. Not because I'm done. It'd be easier to keep playing music than it would be to sell all my shit. But sometimes I just have to step away from it. Do something else, rejuvenate the brain in another way, because it was I don't know, irritating me.
It was irritating you, this feeling that whatever you were going to create was still going to be judged through the lens of this is Fez, he's not like us, or there's a sirens going by in my
Yeah.
house right now. Or just like a frustration of feeling like you're kind of under siege just culturally right now because of the atmosphere, the ambient atmosphere in the country.
I think that there's I think that there's a little truth to the second part of that. Maybe a lot
Hmm.
more than maybe a lot more than I would have thought. I don't like going out. Like
Yeah.
I generally speaking, I don't like being in public. Um, it gives me some level of anxiety. It's dissipated a bit, um, but generally speaking, yeah, I don't want to go out. I don't want to be out in public, and uh, I'm a very very loud introvert. You know,
Yep.
I can work a room, I can do all that stuff, but honestly, it fills me with dread sometimes to go out.
You get exhausted.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know. And I mean, for a good year and a half, after the bad voting happened.
Yeah.
uh,
We saw each other just like on the eve of the election. You may
we
recall
did.
that I was in Chicago playing a show, and we went
It's
and got
correct.
coffee. And we went to a coffee shop near the venue, and there were a bunch of women in hijab. And you
Hmm.
remember?
Oh yeah.
And they were all sort of clustered up. And we were talking about what felt we. I think you and I knew then that things weren't going to go. I had a feeling like
Mhm.
we had ended that tour early so that we could all go home and vote because
Correct.
that we all kind of knew that it was going to matter.
It was literally the day before. It was
Yes,
literally the day before the election when I
I
last
flew
saw you.
home and voted the next day.
Yeah.
Um,
You
and
tried.
yeah, and you said to me, I'm really, this whole thing is making me super anxious because I've never felt so othered in my life.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what it is. It's like a parent, you know? I mean, there's a certain there's a certain thing, and for those of you at home, I have a beard. Okay, it's reasonable, you know. And for a while there, I was just like, I know it's just drawing attention to me. Like I know without a fact that it's just drawing attention to me. And
Yeah.
for a while, when we would travel and stuff like that, I would grow I would literally grow a beard to go to India with my family because it meant that all of the people there would think that I was too old to try to set up an arranged marriage for. It is literally like it literally works. They're just like, oh, he is so old. And then those filthy matchmaker pimps going out in their tracksuits to the wedding will just leave you alone, you know, because they think you've already gone over the hill. They think of you as old man. So I was just like, this is awesome. I don't have to shave. And
Yeah.
I don't have to, you know, and then I can go to India and be and breathe a sigh of relief because 7 days of a wedding means 7 days of people trying to hook you up with someone. And I don't want that at all. I don't want that at all. That's
Yeah.
terrible. And that, but then, you know, the counterpoint to that, and I'll get to my full point in just a second. And the
Sure.
counterpoint to that is I get hassled by TSA.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's a trade-off. It's totally a trade-off. But the problem is like,
Randomly.
yeah, randomly. I'm
Yeah.
randomly selected.
Yeah.
And what happens is that like after T Rump got elected, um, I was just like, do I need to get rid of this beard? Like, is this going to be like just like is this the thing that's going to solve getting stared at? And then I'm just like, who the fuck am I going to shave my beard for? No, man, fuck you guys. I am here.
Right. Rodney Dangerfield's less talented younger brother is not a reason to make a profound personal grooming decision.
Oh, my wife likes my beard. It's soft. Think of all the
Hmm.
time that actually I don't save any time not shaving. I mathed it out because it takes like, you know, 4 hours to get rid of.
So the cumulative shaving time is all
Yeah,
used
really
up.
not.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. One hand washes the. It's all good. But yeah, and you think about like, well, if I change my appearance, am I going to fit in and get hassled less? And then you think, no, this is not. I'm not gonna be afraid of you. I'm not afraid of you. I'm terrified of you, but I'm not afraid of you.
Right. Yeah. So it sort of seems like if you were, I mean, this is not meant as a criticism, but you're a sensitive guy. You don't create this much amazing art
Oh yeah,
and
of
have this
course.
much insight with being sensitive. But if you were a little more vulnerable to other people's criticisms, I mean, you could see how this could push someone into your uncle's situation.
Totally. I could
Just,
totally see it. I could totally see hermiting up and never seeing the outside world again. I could
yeah.
totally do it. And in some ways I do, and in some ways I don't. Like, you know, uh, to tell you the truth, I don't hang out socially.
Yeah.
Like I really only go and hang out with people that I make things with. Whether
Right.
that's a bandmate or whether that's my, you know, my buddy Brian McNally, or, you know, like it's almost exclusively my peer group is a creative peer group.
Hmm.
And there's a sense of safety in that because if I don't trust them implicitly, then I'm not going to play music with them.
Sure.
And you know, you were saying earlier that I've been in a bunch of bands. I did a tally once of all the bands that I was in, just because I was curious. You know, and this was like 2 3 years ago.
Hmm.
And let's say the number was 15. Okay, let's say it was 15 bands. I realized at that point that at some point during the year, I had literally played music with at least one person from every single one of those bands, like within a calendar year.
Wow.
Like that year, I was just like, oh shit, this is my peer group.
Right.
You know, these are the people that I play with. These are the people that I trust. Like I trust them implicitly because I do feel safe around them.
Well, also something you said earlier about how you don't feel the imposter syndrome as strongly around your achievements musically as a musician.
Oh,
But I think that's because you, if you're playing that much with that many people, you've pretty much laid yourself bare. Like you've been in enough situations where your ability and your actual talent and insight were tried, and you met that challenge without any difficulty. So,
In some ways, there's something about, I mean, I guess I get to play with some badasses because I'm kind of a badass.
yeah,
I can throw down and chop it up.
yeah,
But I think also part of that is that there's something real about the criticism that you have to give to a bandmate. And as you get older, you get kinder in your criticism,
right.
not because you're saying anything better or worse. You're just like, I don't like that part, let's try this. I don't like that part, let's try this. And after a while, you don't hear it as, I don't like that part means I hate you.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I
Yeah.
hate everything. And
Well, you're
so,
not newlyweds anymore.
right. And so all of these people that we play with are are kind. Like we're it's the criticism is regular because you're not just being critical, you're trying to make this thing better together.
Do you know I have some rules, actual rules about that?
Really?
Like, yeah, well, I'm sort of been loosely working on a book about,
Oh, yes.
called a Great Way to Make a Lousy Living. But the rules about practice conversations are, you never say all your parts X or all your songs Y. Like,
Oh, Jesus.
that is not an acceptable thing to
Oh,
say.
that's super cruel.
Yeah, well, it happens though, especially with younger bands. You're also not allowed to say that part sounds like Z band. Like that part just sounds like Radiohead. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
because the thing that you should always do is write every part all the way to the end. Like write the whole song. You may not end up using that song, but through the course of discovery, there will be no wasted work, and it may turn into the best song you've ever written.
Totally.
And if you're like, well, we don't have time to chase every idea, well, you're not going to practice enough then,
Right.
So, the strength of the sort of the band relationship is that it's interdependent and that there's a lot of trust there. So it sounds like one of the coping skills you develop for imposter syndrome, at least in the artistic world or as a musical world, is to just like stick it out and just develop relationships with a small number of people that you trust.
That's the only way. I mean, I know a lot of people, but I'm not, I mean, I'm friendly with a lot of people but generally speaking, it's really, really controlled. And I think that's, I mean, everyone has their own anxieties and their own problems and their own issues with things. And some people manage them better than others. And in some ways, I don't feel as paralyzed, but I also have to really push it. I have to really, really take an active engagement in managing what makes me anxious, what makes me depressed, what makes me have a difficult time.
I when I see you on stage, though, I don't see a hint of anxiety. Like you're such and maybe I'm just now getting a peek behind the curtain with that, but I've never watched a Small Awesome show where I thought, man, Faiz is not really feeling confident. Like it's always like, is that just part of the loud introvert kind of, is this a front? Is it a persona, or are you just confident enough?
It's rehearsal.
Yeah.
It's like knowing that the shit. That's the thing. Like if I came up unprepared, I'd be a total mess. Instead, it's just like I'm like an old man in a rocking chair on the stage. Like I don't like, sorry man, this is my 30 minutes. And
Right.
I've totally prepared for this. And I think that's what happens. Like, when I'm playing an instrument and singing, it's complicated because I don't have time to
worry.
I don't have time to worry because I got to do both of these things and I got to do both of them well. And in the case of Small Awesome, there's no drums to obscure my flubbed notes.
Yeah.
So you gotta get them right. And so the rehearsal that it takes to actually do that is what gives me that sort of lack of anxiety. Like, I on the stage, if I got the microphone, like whatever, I'm always going to be working with someone who is my safety net. You know, and you can two wheel it all the time. Like when the car goes up on two wheels and you're like, oh, okay, we got to get back down. It's there. It's there. But I just found some sort of way to kind of channel any of that nervous energy or anxiety into a performance.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my favorite feeling is not at the end of the song when everyone claps. It's in the middle of the song when you can hear the room listening.
Yeah.
That is the drug.
Yeah.
That is the drug. Like the room just you hear it like inhale, and I've only heard it, I've only like really, really, really heard it like a handful of times. And it's few and far between, but like, I heard it twice, like 5 years apart. It's all I needed.
Right.
That's all I needed. I needed to hear it again to know that it wasn't a fluke. To know that it wasn't just like, you know, it wasn't just like everyone
A
took
flash in the pan.
everyone took a sip at the same time.
Right.
And music has been such a part of my language. It's how I communicate with the people that are dearest to me.
Right.
I play music with my wife from time to time, and
Mhm.
she has no interest in playing in public, like none,
Right.
because
You
why
guys sing together?
Uh-huh. Yeah, we
No,
sing together, we play together.
I'm gonna just briefly interject. I think that we don't sing. People don't sing enough.
No.
My wife, the theater professor, whose resume says soprano with belt on it, which I was like, well, how else would you keep your pants up? But
yeah, I mean, hitting all those high notes.
yeah, she's a great singer, and she sings with some friends. Not as much as she'd like, but they just get together at the house here and they sing standards and they sing bluegrass songs, and man, it's a underrated thing for people to do, honestly.
Yeah, it totally is. And you have a beautiful voice. I knew this before I heard you sing.
I'm not a big singer, no.
Yes.
Not a big fan.
But you do have a voice. There is. I think that most musicians can actually sing to some. It's like, I was talking to my friend Bill the other day. I was like, "Can you sing?" And he's like, "No." I was like, "Can you hit the note?" He's like, "Yeah, I can hit the note." I was like, "Then you can sing."
Right.
You're just not
practice.
you're just not trained at it. I mean,
Yeah.
and sometimes sometimes that's enough. Like if you don't want to do it, I mean, shit, then don't do it.
Right.
But as far
It's just
as
it's a level of intimacy that I'm not comfortable with.
Yeah.
Like I feel really vulnerable if I'm the only person in the room singing. I would rather run through the room with no clothes on. Honestly, I feel more exposed singing.
I am telling you that I have talked to you. You have a twin brother who sings.
He's a great singer.
Of course he is. That means you are too.
Oh.
And B, your wife has also told me in private that you have a very lovely voice. And I know this. I've heard you, sing a tiny little tune here. Anyway, I'm not going to kiss your ass in your own show.
Well, no, but I just think that like, so I had a guest the other day whose interview will go up after yours. He was talking about, he was formerly involved in a Christian charismatic like church group, and there would be 200 people all singing at once. And he said like churches are most of them are no longer aware of why that's powerful. Like, when you go to like white church now, like it's going to, everyone's sort of sleepily singing, and it's a thing you have to do in order to get through this obligation you have weekly, so you can get to Sizzler before the Baptists let out. But these charismatic churches, man, they, everyone's on their toes and singing as loud as they can. And he said that like it's a profound spiritual experience, and it also opens people up to being told a lot of things. Like we all walk around as like sort of emotionally constipated people in America, totally atomized by capitalism, and we don't interrelate enough. And I think that there's a guy here named Stephen Kramer who's been on the mental health tip way longer than I have and has done a lot of really amazing work, but he's just started a co-ed choir here. And if I didn't hate the sound of my voice, I would probably go sing with him. Maybe I should just suck it up and do it anyway. But
there's safety in numbers. That's the nice thing about a group of people. Like, are you familiar with the Mennonites at all? And they're
sure.
I mean, that's my bandmate in Small Awesome, Jim McGregor. He was raised Mennonite.
Really?
Yeah. And
Pennsylvania or
unsure.
Yeah.
Unsure. We've had
Jim.
this discussion. He's the best. And he he was raised Mennonite, and part of the reason that he has such a strong musical acumen is that he was singing from a very, very young age. And the Mennonites do those crazy, like 5-part harmonies to hymns. And so it adds this whole layer of depth and complexity. But I think that's part of why he's such a great musician, is because from a small point in time, he has figured out how parts interlock.
Uh-huh.
And when I look at myself as a fake, is because I don't know, I taught myself I taught myself how to do all of this stuff.
Well, let me drop a little bit of like shocking information into this conversation. So B-52s, everybody knows this band. They're from Athens. The two women who sing in that band basically are 2/3 of the Andrews Sisters like style harmonies, and
Right.
they sing these amazing, completely untrained.
Yeah.
Like I have gotten to know them a little bit and worked for them some, Kate and Cindy just started singing together one day.
Which makes sense. I like untrained. I like untrained, and I want to make sure that we don't hear untrained as faking it. I think that
Right.
I think that when you're untrained, that you make a lot of decisions that are
Like the flatted fifth.
yeah,
Yeah.
you do something that you're not supposed to. Like, as it's not about, the chops. It's not
Right.
about but then you have someone like, Pete Barduniotis of the Hype and Fez Zeppelin. That guy can literally play anything.
Yeah.
Like he literally can play anything. You're just like, hey, what about? And then he'll just play it. I can't do that. So I mean, whatever. It's a different skill set. It's a different way of understanding.
What's Pete's background?
He is.
Is he trained?
I think that and I may misspeak. I just kind of feel like he was a kid that sat down and played along to everything.
Yeah.
Like
He's a very smart guy.
His radio and his guitar were probably right next to each other. Whereas someone like Brian Pennington, who is also in the Hype and Fez Zep, totally different guitar player, totally different style, just as great. But Brian is the guy that sat down and thought he had to memorize where all the notes on the guitar were.
You don't have to do that? Because I've been doing that on the bass.
He memorized where all the notes are, and then he also has mild synesthesia. So
I have that too.
Yeah, where he'll the notes have different shades that kind of register, and he'll know if it's flat or sharp by the color that he gets, the sensory color that he gets playing the notes.
Yeah. So I almost feel like, though, as we're sort of talking about this, like before I interrupted this conversation where you were going, you were saying that I'm much more comfortable playing music because it's my, well, I guess your what, fifth language that you speak?
Something like that.
Most people, it's our second language. But that visual art, it's not, you're not as, I say visual art, it implies I'm not talking about multimedia, but like you're the sort of interdisciplinary art creations that you do.
The reason that feels like a fake, because it's a more strongly than music, because the design, any sort of design stuff, whether it's, graphic design or web design or poster design or any of these installations, I'm making it up as I go because I'm even less trained in design. I only picked up Illustrator and Photoshop like 8 years ago, 10 years ago, but I teach it at a university now. And it's crazy to me that happened. But I think that like I have to look up literally everything that goes wrong with design, but I think that some of that is the nature of doing it. You're not just going to sit there and read the manual and then know how to do it. So you work on something and then you get to the point where your ability is totally maxed out and you don't know how to solve this problem. So you have to look up the solution to this problem. And thankfully, for the magic of the internet, I can find the answer to every single one of those problems. But it's very stepping stone. Like I didn't go to school for it. I didn't take any classes in it.
Well, but I mean, do you think Saul Bass went to school for it, or was he just like an intuitive genius? I mean,
I don't know.
I think that there's a balance there. I mean, I certainly think, Salvador Dali, when you go look at his early work, He was doing landscapes and pushing watercolors
Right.
around in the sort of style of the French Impressionists before he sort of launched his career in acrylics and oils doing surrealist stuff. Like, and he's on record as saying, "Learn to paint the classics, and the world will love you."
Yeah.
But like, I think that there's a certain amount of like intuitive innate skill, but like it's a lot of it's just repetition and
Aesthetics too. I
yeah,
mean, you can't really teach an aesthetical viewpoint. I mean,
right.
the same way that I write music the way that I write it isn't because I'm trying to write it away. It's just kind of what spills out.
Let me ask you a. This is a really, and I can edit this out later if we decide it's just too goddamn personal. But like, there's this othering that happens in public, and this othering even that happens, and it's happened between you and me. I have said insensitive things, and you have very gently sort of said, "Hey, man, uh, maybe rethink how you ask that question."
Well, well, we're friends. I mean, if
Yeah,
don't, I mean, come on. That's
but
that's. I would hope you
yeah,
would. I would assume that you would do the same for me.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, absolutely. But like, but you're married to Beth, who is not Indian and not Muslim,
Hmm.
and she's she makes the Pillsbury Doughboy look Sicilian. And was there a point in your relationship where like was there a moment where you had to sit down and say, "Hey, look, we're going to spend the rest of our lives together," and there are times when people like you can make me feel really excluded and different and awkward and
We
like
always talk about it. We
yeah,
always talk. It has been a regular conversation as part of our relationship.
yeah,
Like honestly, I would say this. We don't need to edit this out. Like this is I celebrate this shit. Like
yeah,
I can actually talk about this stuff with my wife
hmm,
and like have a meaningful conversation about it. And there's always push and pull because you're trying to understand each other.
yeah,
You're trying to find some form of understanding. And honestly, to tell you the truth, I think that we talk about it a lot more now that now that the bigots are in power.
yeah,
It's a lot more, because it comes up more. It becomes more prevalent. And she was sitting next to me when Rodney Dangerfield's brother called me the Ayatollah, and she's like, "We need to figure out how to handle this," because she's like, "I am totally fine with getting mouthy, but I also don't want to get shot, you
yeah,
know? And
no,
it's like
I
it's like what do you do? How do you plan for something that is always like a wild card? Like,
yeah.
you
I said to
know?
my wife one day, I see these things on the news where there's some fucking like day trader berating the Latinas who work in the cafeteria down the street from where he basically ruins people's lives with capitalism. Or
Yeah.
I see somebody shouting at a black woman. And I was like, how come this shit never happens when I'm around? Because I will take a bullet. I will fucking beat somebody's ass
Yeah.
cheerfully. She says, well, of course it doesn't happen when you're around because people know that. Like, if I was
Yeah.
sitting at the table with you, Stanley Dangerfield wouldn't have ever said anything because
No, no, he wouldn't. He would have caught hands.
yeah, it makes me completely insane. Like,
Yeah.
but like,
Well,
you
there's this
know,
weird thing. They feel safe to like letting a little bit of air out of the bigotry balloon,
man,
just
I will flip a
because
fucking table over in a heartbeat.
he
Like,
clearly read the room,
yeah,
and he's
oh
just like,
yeah,
what the fuck are they gonna say?
yeah,
And so, yeah, I mean, like, whether as a byproduct of something like this happening, or whether just both of us trying to understand each other, Beth and I always talk about this stuff. I
hmm,
mean, like, not like it's clockwork, but I don't know, once a week.
yeah,
Like, it's just part of it's part of the way that you communicate with other people. But the fact is that she's my favorite.
yeah,
And so, so I'm
yeah,
gonna have I'm gonna have I'm gonna have way more of these conversations because because it's so safe. It
yeah.
is it is so safe. Like
That's
we can totally disagree, and we have to now figure out how we're going to come to an understand. We're not going to agree to disagree. We're just going to disagree.
right.
But then you still have to have an understanding of where the person's coming from,
Hmm, hmm.
and it's so easy for uh, these conversations about race to get gnarly quick.
Yeah.
Like really, really gnarly. Like how do I say that, white people scare the shit out of me and have my wife not be like, I'm white, right? Come
Right.
on.
Right. Well, McGregor, he's also in a mixed relationship, right? If I
Yeah.
remember. Yeah.
Yeah. He is. He is. Hope is Vietnamese.
Yeah.
And so he's been to Nam. He did a tour in Nam.
Yeah. Did it.
Um, but yeah, and I think that's I think that Jim and I understand each other on a real fundamental level just because of that. Because it's because he's just the other end of that portion of the relationship that Beth is. He's the dominant culture.
Right.
But I'm like I would be totally surprised if Hope didn't get shit. Um,
But he's
and
not
so
around.
yeah, of
Yeah.
course, absolutely.
Do you have a bug out plan?
Um, no, I mean I casually think I got like jugs of water in the basement. I don't know.
I mean, like there are definitely times, where I watch the news and I think, well, what was it like to live in Berlin in 1929,
Right?
or 32, or what was it like to live in Tehran in 1977, like where
Yeah.
things are starting to kind of slide into uh, a different cultural, like safety level for people who are different.
Yeah.
And I've uh, just you're talking about your neighbors who run the convenience store, your friends who now have to buzz people in based on whether or not they're expecting trouble.
Yep.
Um, and I have some Sikh friends, and they're just so high profile in the U.S. and people just make like these racist assumptions about the turban, like they've changed
Can we
where
get a
they
little
go.
like can we get a little like accuracy in racism? Like
Right? No.
that's
What?
actually the thing that offended me the most. They'd be like, you're a towel head. I was like, do I have a towel on my head?
Right.
No, I don't. Like
Right.
what the fuck you? Like
Right.
I would grammatically correct the slurs as a
Right.
kid.
But I
And
mean,
then
like, racism by its very nature isn't very well considered. There's
no,
this
no, no.
assumption that you're different enough from me that I feel comfortable, and I'm in a dominant enough position culture that I feel comfortable being a complete shit to you. It doesn't matter to me that the difference between, Sunni or Shia or Sikh versus Hindu versus, to them, it's
Yeah.
just like there's all, and you know, not to put too fine a point on it, but for me, like the whole underlying assumption of capitalism is that some lives matter less than others.
Correct.
And there's no country, I think, that's embraced that more thoroughly than the one we live in. Like, oh, well, I'm going to buy these T-shirts because they only cost 79 cents each. Why is that? Well, they were made, in El Salvador, and
Right.
like they don't have to pay as much. Why not? Why don't they have to pay as much there?
Right.
Like
And
what is your there because it's made by someone whose lives matter less than yours? Like,
well,
but
that's that arm of colonialism. That's the thing
yeah,
that keeps that's the reason that the 24-hour tech support on your computer routes to my family's hometown of Hyderabad because it's 12 and a half hour time difference or whatever. I don't know how they get a half time zone. 12 and a half hour time difference. Um,
yes,
because it's cheaper, and I have such a mixed feeling about it because, well, at the same time, it has improved the city. There's a lot of jobs, but they're not paying as well. But they're tech jobs, but they want the tech jobs, and the tech jobs pay well. But you need too much money to be able to live off of it, and so it's like I don't know. Like, yeah, colonialism is bad, but there are good sides to it, and it's so fucked to even consider it because I should be rocked to my core with anger, and instead I'm just like, well. It's not totally and completely, it's just mostly bad. It's like it's
it's
like it's like
mostly
it's mostly bad.
right.
And so I guess I don't have a bug out plan because of for lack of a better analogy, the same reason I don't cut my beard. Nah, fuck you, I'm here.
Right.
I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm not running. I want
No,
to I know how to, I could help build guillotines. Like, what do you guys need?
right. I I have a bug out plan.
Do you?
Well, it's just it feels to say this in what's going to eventually be a public forum, but like, my daughter, at my daughter's school today, like my wife and I are trying to second guess the local sheriff's department because they're going to have a live shooter drill, and I don't want my daughter to go through that.
No.
I don't think that's in any way productive for her, like, psyche. We adopted her out of pretty intensely.
She doesn't need that shit. She
she's already got
from
anxiety.
what I know, she doesn't need that shit.
Exactly.
She doesn't need to go to school and be like violently stressed out because this country has an unhealthy obsession with their fucking fake dick guns.
Well, I think that like a big part of sort of keeping people constantly on a crisis footing is a control thing.
It totally is.
And so this whole live shooter thing makes me completely bananas. And it also not, I mean, most specifically because I know that it's not good for my sweet daughter's brain.
They're gaslighting your children for the NRA. Like, if I may be like totally reductive about this, I mean, sure, it's slightly more complex than I just explained it, but essentially that's the way that it's working.
Yeah, but part of the whole like developing a bug out plan is such an extension of my white privilege because I know I could go to Mexico and have a pretty good life.
Yeah.
I don't want to get caught on the boring side of Trump's wall. Like,
I'm going to go over to Mexico and they're just going to talk to me in Spanish because that's what they do when I go there.
But I mean, like one of the young women who I go to this one taqueria so much that I've become sort of part of the furniture there. And this young woman one day said, what do you do for, like, what do you and your wife do for fun? And I was like, oh man, that's a really bad question to ask a workaholic,
Yeah.
But she said, I know you're a musician. Do you play music for fun? And I was like, my wife plays music for fun. I play music for money.
Yeah.
She said, well, from where I'm from in central Mexico, on Friday nights, everybody takes their guitars down to this one bar, and there'll be 75, 80 people there, and we all sing songs. And I was just like, dude, that sounds so great. Yeah.
That sounds so nice.
I said, how many songs do you know the words to? And she said, oh, I don't know, 100? 200. Sure. Like, it's just part of like, and some of them are filthy and hilarious, and some of them are really sad and like, but just like, I was in a group of a big international room once, and everyone, like, it was a big drinking thing, and people started singing songs, and the Dutch guys had like a dozen songs that they all knew, and the English guys had a bunch of songs that they all knew, and the German guys had a bunch of songs that they all knew, but hearing a bunch of people singing really heartily in German's a little creepy because you just
it's a very guttural language.
Well, you just automatically have
yeah. Back mic free.
Yeah. But then the Americans were like, fuck, I know Old MacDonald. Like, we didn't really have any songs,
Well, it's funny because I feel that that they're all there. I mean, they're all there. They're just different. Like, we have such a weird relationship with like popular music in America. There's folk music, I guess, but it's such a curious artifact. Like, it's almost an artifact as opposed to something that carries through. Like, there isn't like I mean, at least from my perspective, there isn't like this crazy folk tradition that still. It doesn't exist in public today. It's actually very fringe.
I think part of that may be that we don't really have a national identity as based in cultural heritage. Because for me, you say, show me an American, and I'll be like, that Sikh guy is just as American as I am. That Puerto Rican guy, just as American as I am. That Greek immigrant, we've all got these atomized cultures. Like, I have Appalachian culture down in my bones, and I could sing 3 verses of Pretty Polly, even though it's a terribly creepy murder ballad. But but as as a result, like, I think that diversity is tremendously important to our identity as Americans. But like, there's a part of our culture now that's weirdly ascendant, the Ein Reich, Ein Volk, Ein Führer, blood and soil types who are like. American identity is white America, and they're sort of seizing on this lack of a single unifying principle other than diversity, and sort of creating this divisive idea of what America is. And there's all these people who are like, you should talk to racists. I'm like, no, No, you
No,
shouldn't.
no, I don't
Uh,
want to.
they don't deserve my time and attention, and they definitely don't deserve any media oxygen. But that's a whole other discussion.
Sure.
I don't want to get too in detail here, but yeah, I feel like Fez's sort of approach to handling imposter syndrome is just to triple the amount of work as a normal human being.
Yeah. Sleep less, do more.
Yeah, and
It's
you have
it's
all of Chicago winter to like.
oh, it's beautiful. You bunker down. You bunker
Yeah,
down and get, and just you can you can almost force prolificacy. You just have to keep doing,
how do you organize your time and work? Do you have like a to-do list or a schedule, or like
I
most
keep
people
a
can't maintain this level of productivity without?
I keep a real light schedule. Like
Yeah,
I put the things that I do for fun and the things that I have to do for work on the same list. Like I have to record vocals for a song with Hench. So
right.
I put that on the same list as I have to finish the design for this website for work.
Hmm.
And honestly, I don't even look at the list. I just know that the list is there. I'm constantly adding to the list. Mostly I juggle it in my head, but I am, as in some ways as a child of privilege, I haven't had a 9 to 5 in I don't know, 15 years. But
Wow.
I've had tons of work. I mean, I've had no less than 3 jobs in that same amount of
Oh yeah,
time.
I've never been as busy as I've been since I got laid off last
Yeah.
November
Oh,
from my day job.
totally.
I'm
And
playing more
so,
gigs and doing the podcast now, and
yeah.
it's selling gear online, and I stay pretty busy. I
Yeah.
spend a
And
lot less money,
sure.
but
I mean,
that's
if you're so busy you can't spend the money that you're earning, that's when you start saving.
yeah, exactly. But
And
also just kind of staying around the house and eating at home and stuff. It makes a
yeah,
big difference.
and I think that I'm just compelled to be prolific because it's such a drug. Like I went through a while ago. I went through like a maybe like 10 years ago. I went through kind of a wild like manic episode,
Hmm.
and
That was
and
musical chairs,
yeah,
folks.
oh
Right?
yeah, 'cause I was just yeah.
I
See,
remember.
there you remember.
Yeah.
And I think that part of it is that you just kind of run with it. Like as opposed to being terrified of my own anxiety, I was just like, no, I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to do this. I'm going to sleep for 4 hours. I'm going to work for 8. I'm going to sleep for 4, work for 8, and just keep this weirdo schedule
Yeah.
going. And then you just kind of embrace the fact that this is what your brain wants it to do. And I made
Right.
a lot of stuff, and some of it was crap, and enough of it wasn't.
Yeah.
And so it's just it's it's still kind of how I try to do that stuff. Like, I mean, it's not a it's not a like pull yourself up by your bootstraps and get over your depression because that's fucking stupid.
Yeah.
Like that's not it is. I was very, very lucky to have a certain type of depression that still
Hmm.
allowed me to be productive.
Do you ever
Where
have you ever taken meds?
no,
Yeah.
no, I've never taken meds. I had a therapist for a while, and they sucked.
You can't. No one's first
Sucked.
therapist works out, and I think that may also be in part just like you have to figure out how to be in therapy.
Right.
Like everyone's like, I had this. My first therapist was terrible. Like, okay, so was your first band, and
Not
the rest,
mine. My first band toured.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
but
But like
I mean,
you got to learn
yeah,
how to be in the room.
yeah, totally. And I think that there's I think that I think that I don't share as much as I make, if that makes sense. Like
It's a,
there's
it's
like
a great Andy Warhol quote, right? You make so much art that people don't have time to criticize it. But
yeah,
that wasn't exactly what he said, but his whole thing was make art relentlessly and put it out. And while everyone's trying to figure out how to react to what you just put out, you need to be working on more art.
yeah, you make more, you make more, you make more. And I'm a little more guarded in what I tend to share just um because I'm trying to exhibit some sort of quality control.
Hmm.
Like I can't just like Bob Pollard out into the thing, but I mean, I'm literally sitting on 63 song demos just for Small Awesome.
Right.
And it's It's great. It's hilarious. Like every time I put another one on, it just gets funnier.
Well, I've always been a believer that you should just write every song all the way to the end, because not only do you like have more material to choose from them, but then you've also like really honed the craft of writing the song.
I became
Like,
better by the sheer force of just playing and writing this much,
well,
so
it's
that
like, I'm going to get jacked by lifting weights, and you lift weights once, like it's not going to work. But like then you have someone like, uh, you know, uh, To Kill a Mockingbird, what's her
Harper
name?
Lee.
Harper Lee, who writes one sort of wet firecracker of a book that ended up being in a box until after she died, and then one absolute American classic like Bullseye, and
It's
then
so
she
good.
never does it again.
Great. It's great. It's great. I love it. I think that the single work is beautiful. Like that book is so good that
Mhm.
they couldn't even fuck up the movie.
Right.
Like that's
The
how
movie's
good it
brilliant. Yeah,
is.
it's really good.
Like that's how good the book was. That
Yeah,
they couldn't even just like botch the whole thing.
yeah.
And
It's
I
really,
think that I
it's
think there's
brilliant.
something to that. I think that there's really something to that. I think that it's like people like Henry Darger who made a whole bunch of work that they never showed anyone, and then some, he dies, and then
Right.
some guy's cleaning out his apartment and finds like the work of like a classic, like an
Yes.
American visionary as an artist, and he was just this private guy that didn't tell anyone that that's what he was doing.
Yeah, one
And
of my great fears, like, people are always, you know, I think there are people who feel like it's their job in life to point out where they perceive to be artistic frauds, and like they will really bang on about like, oh, so and so auto tuned everything, and so doesn't really know. Like you always hear things like, oh, Bernard Purdy played all of Ringo's parts, which is just transparent bullshit, and
yeah,
that whole thing needs to go away right now. But that's just people who are like not creating anything, being incredibly jealous of people who are. My fear is not that there are people getting away with artistic fraud, but that there are like there's a Pavarotti somewhere, in rural Italy driving a milk truck who just never got the opportunity to
oh,
go study opera because he's working class and there wasn't like the pathway wasn't there.
totally. I'm a child of privilege, and I said this earlier, but
Yeah.
I'm a child of privilege, and that allows me the luxury to play music.
Yeah.
I mean, not to make music. I mean, music is a universal enough language. I mean, like whatever, you can sing. You don't need to buy an instrument or whatever. But
Hmm.
to do what I'm able to do requires that I come from a background that is not. Uh, I had a leg up,
Yeah.
like skin color aside, I had a leg up. Like I
Yeah.
was, raised by highly educated people to be highly educated, but
How's your family sort of handled this non-traditional career path you've chosen? Like they just finally come to accept it, or
it used to be a lot worse.
yeah.
It used to be a lot worse, and this is actually one of the first things about the whole concept of imposter syndrome is that I'm not, well, I mean, I guess I'm not what they expected, but
Sure.
but I think that it's weird, like when I got made faculty over at Northwestern, like
Hmm.
6 months ago, a year ago, or whatever the case may be. It was almost like that was the first time I had legitimacy in my parents' eyes. And I'm being very, very, very reductive about
Yeah.
this because, of course they're proud of me. I mean, because I didn't turn out to be a dick.
Right.
Like sometimes I think parents are just like, well, he's not a total asshole. Like sometimes that's good enough, but like I think that that it's that sometimes they're trying to get an easier way of describing what I do to other people.
Yes.
This is the first time they're like, "Oh, he teaches at Northwestern." It's like a one sentence
Right.
thing as opposed to like, "Well, he's kind of,"
Right.
and they don't have to talk, they don't have to do 5 sentences to explain what I do.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
it's not that they're discounting all of the other stuff that I do, but I think that they were just kind of relieved that they were able to say what I do in like 6 words.
I mean, when I renounced my birthright to go to a large land grant state school to
Hmm.
play music, I thought my entire family was going to just like have a collective nervous breakdown. Um, but I was like not. flourishing as a student and was clearly driven to play music. And it's,
Yeah.
I think that like my mom passed, I think, without ever really fully accepting it. But like the rest of my family's like, okay, he's a drummer, and that's just
Right.
how it's going to be. But yeah, well, man, we sort of wind these things up often with a series of questions that I've come up with
Hit me.
that sort of mirror the Bernard Pivot questions that James Lipton uses to end the end of the Actor Studio every time. Um,
You know, he
yeah,
used to be a pimp.
what?
James Lipton used to be a pimp.
What? Really?
Totally serious. I'm not even kidding. Look it up.
I'll look it up. He's got that total like mid-Atlantic
Dude, he is heating up a coat hanger and asking you questions. But yeah, James Lipton used to be a pimp.
I'm trying to imagine him like, so what sound do you hate? Answer that question very carefully.
Dressed like Huggy Bear.
I'm gonna look it up.
Yeah.
That's amazing to me. But I mean, really? Okay.
Yeah.
That's a new bit of information for me.
Awesome.
My questions are not those questions because I know
Okay.
that it must walk around with an idea of what those questions are in their head and a preconceived answer, and I try to sort of come at this raw.
Sure. Good.
So first question: what is your favorite meal that you've ever had?
Oh my God. It's probably Halim, which is like wheat and meat. It's almost like a porridge.
Uh-huh.
It's my family makes it spectacularly. You squeeze some lime over it. It's like cream of wheat almost.
Uh-huh.
Not quite. But it's got, chunks of lamb or goat or beef or whatever in it. You sprinkle some cilantro on it. You squeeze a lemon over it, and then you throw little fried onions on top of it, and it's perfect. It's perfect
Is
every
it
time every meal that I can have it, I will have it.
is it like biryani but with a wheat base instead of rice?
It's a little more liquidy.
Oh, okay.
It's more like it is more like a porridge. It's almost like a really thick like barley soup.
Is there a particular time that you remember having that stands out as being just truly exceptional, or is it just one of those things that you?
I'm just kind of hanging out until I can get my next fix.
Right. That's
You
me and carne
know?
asada tacos from this one taqueria here. But yeah, I get
Yeah.
it. Like
It's it's
that's
it's
the best thing ever.
it just kind of answers, like it does it for me. I love it.
Mhm. Okay. Next question. What is the most frightened you've ever been?
Mm. Um, I guess I guess the one that always sticks out when we talk about fear is there was a point I was real young.
Hmm.
I was real young, and my dad was parked at a gas station, which is literally across the street from where the gas station that we own is. So this is a long time ago. He puts me in the car, gets out, the car is not in park.
Oh
And so it
God.
starts rolling backwards towards like an edge, you know?
Are you in a
And
car seat or are you
I
just in a
I am
seatbelt?
I'm just sitting in the car. I'm old enough to know that the seatbelt is on. I'm in the back seat of this thing. And this thing is rolling towards an edge, and I see the look of realization and panic on my father's face, and I'm like it's you're totally out of control.
Yeah.
You're totally out of control. You're free falling. Your gut is going, and obviously him and the gas station attendant stopped the car, and
Hmm.
I don't even know how fast it was going. Like, I don't know, 2 miles an hour.
Right.
But it feels like it's just racing down a hill, and it's not
Hmm.
racing down a hill. And honestly, even if it went over the edge, it probably would have bthat fine. But it's what I think of when I think of fear.
Right.
Is
Then
this,
did you
yeah.
have that feeling after the election?
That was just, yeah, it was kind of a sick in the gut
Right. Feeling
sort of
that
thing.
no one's
It
at the
was, yeah,
wheel.
yeah. It was, I hate to,
Because I've
uh,
made that same metaphorical comparison that once when I was very young, I was in a car and all of the adults were hammered,
mhm.
and my brother and I were in the back seat. And I had been told many times by some of those same adults, never get in a car with an adult who's been drinking. And
Yeah,
yet,
there you
um,
are.
it happened. And I remember sort of being just aware enough that this was going to probably end badly, that I just decided that I was going to have to be okay with whatever happened. But
Sure.
man, it was terrible. And like, I've had that feeling since November of 2016,
Yeah.
like that people at the wheel are
Are trash.
right, right, and not acting in the best interest of anybody else in the car.
Yeah.
Of all the things that you've lost, what is the thing that you regret the most?
Um, it's weird. I don't have a ton of, I mean, like I have a lot of things, but I don't have like a ton of regret. I think that one of the things that I do regret is that I was a real dick to this guy, Charles Behensky, in in like middle school. Like I was a real dick to him for no reason, just because kids are shitty, and I was a shitty kid. Um, and then I saw him again in college, and I never apologized to him. And I've tried to look him up from time to time, not to like, you know,
Right.
but I regret when he came into my social circle that I didn't just own up to it. I do regret that. I think that that sucks, that I was just so shitty to him.
Yeah.
And
Do you know why people in 12-step programs make all those apologies?
mm-mm.
The whole 12-step thing is built up, is eliminating reasons for you to feel bad feelings about yourself that you feel like you have to silence. Like the whole reason that alcoholics drink and drug users use drugs is because they're not happy at zero. At like,
Right.
at
At the
unity,
even. Yeah.
at unity gain, we're miserable.
Yeah.
Unless we go and do the work. And so leading up to that step, there's all this work that you do to work on the things that you're frightened of and the people that you resent. And then you get to the things that you feel guilty about. And like, there's things that happen. Like there's people in meetings who killed people because they were driving drunk.
Right.
And like the guilt of the things that you've done will drive you to drink, literally drive you to try to blot out those feelings. So the reason that you walk around making those amends is to try to unburden your conscience of things that will make you feel bad enough to start drinking alcoholically or using drugs again.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But there's also part of the provision of that whole process is that except when to do so would injure them or others. And there's like some sort of narcissistic use of the steps that you do if you're not working a solid program. I don't want to get too arcane with this, but like, don't go fucking apologizing to people because you're seeking their approval or trying to
Correct.
insinuate yourself into their lives again. So like, that's why there's a whole sponsor program. So there's someone that sort of holds your hand and go, I don't think you need to call her ever again.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. Like, don't make me have to forgive you because you were a dick.
Right.
You
And
know?
so there's a lot of like, and I think that in many ways, maybe the program hasn't caught up with this millennial idea of like, don't make me do the emotional work. Like,
Right.
don't like, it's, I think that the anonymous letter with no return address is a really good way of kind of doing your
Ooh.
amends.
I like that. I like
Yeah.
that. That actually seems a lot, I don't know, less invasive.
Well,
than,
you're not
like,
forcing that person to revisit whatever trauma,
correct.
like with regards to how you process it. Like if you were to,
Right. Yeah, he has
like,
every right to.
right.
But I was
Right.
also in like 7th grade. So, I mean, like, I didn't destroy him.
Right. He's clearly still going.
Yeah, I mean, and when I ran into him in college, he was a real nice guy, and we,
Mhm.
we went to shows and saw each other there and stuff like that.
Kinda
I mean,
makes
like,
it worse though.
it kind
Like,
well, no, because even at my worst, it wasn't enough to just like destroy a human being. Like
Yeah.
I would feel much worse about that if he was like a psycho, and instead he was just a regular dude. It's just that I was a dick to him all the time for no fucking reason other than kids suck.
Yeah. Yeah. What is your favorite place to gig?
Hideout's pretty sweet.
Love the Hideout.
I like the stage. As a guy who plays Shoeless, it's kind of gnarly because that stage is spongy. It's so gross.
Tell me something. Is the shoe thing cultural?
I just feel comfortable. I play at home without shoes on.
Yeah.
Because I don't really wear shoes in the house. I got sandals that I kick on and off if I step outside, but I just play at home without shoes on. And so when I get to the stage, I'm just like, well, I'm just as comfortable here as I am at home. So
Yeah.
I think that it's just, and part of it was like when I was doing Fez Up solo with like looping pedals and that sort of stuff, I needed a way to turn the knob with my toes while I was playing and singing.
You maniac. That's hilarious.
And so it was so much easier to just like, yeah, I would just adjust levels with my feet like a gibbon. And um and that's kind of what it is. Like I feel comfy, I feel grounded, I feel connected to the stage.
Right.
And so it's like if your fingernails are X, because I play fingerstyle a lot. If your fingernails are a certain length while you're rehearsing, then you have to make sure that they're the same length when you play the show,
Yeah.
because otherwise it throws your whole game off.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it makes sense. So visa and income considerations aside, if you could live anywhere, where would you live?
Mm, Barcelona's pretty good.
Man, I like Barcelona a lot.
Barcelona's pretty damn good.
Yeah, I'm a big fan.
It's pretty good. But I think that part of the neatness is that it's so close to everything else. Like we in the US are so separated from, other countries of note,
Right.
um, that the ability to kind of, puddle jump and hop around is pretty rad.
Yeah.
And my Spanish would get better. Like it's rusty. And and
Yeah.
and so it would be, another way to flex that part of the brain.
Yeah. I really love Barcelona. The time I've spent there has been really magical.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It's really
Um.
close to Chicago in some ways, but just the way that it feels for me, I guess.
Yeah. I really like the fact that there's just a whole section of Barcelona that is so North African
Yeah.
that uh, I've like some of the best, just like chicken and rice with pita that I've had was
Mhm.
oddly in Barcelona. You know.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Um, if you didn't play music, is there another career that you think you would find as satisfying?
Maybe writing. I'm not as
Yeah.
disciplined with it. Like I love writing, but I'm just not disciplined with it. Like
Yeah, it's tough.
it's such a like if I could get the discipline for it, I would totally love it.
Hmm.
But since I know that I don't have it, and I hate painting, and
Yeah.
I hate it. I hate painting. I can't stand it. I'd rather paint a wall than a piece of art. At least the wall, I'm like, well, I got something good done.
Is that, do you think that you could become good at painting?
No, no, because I hate it. I can't become good at something that I am diametrically
So
opposed
the
to.
hatred isn't just about not being skilled, but just the whole like sensory experience of pushing paint around a canvas makes you
Yeah, I
fills you with
can't. I
rage.
can't stand it. I can draw. I'll draw all day long. I love
Yeah.
drawing. I can't stand painting. I hate paint. It's crap.
Final question of this revision of the questions. I've only
Uh-huh.
got 7 instead of
Sure.
10. What is your perfect musical instrument, and do you already own it?
Um, there's the old trusty Rickenbacker that I've just played the most shows with.
The natural
Yeah,
maple top
yeah,
guitar.
that blonde. That's the one that I'd grab in a fire. But
Yeah. Oh,
like
I might rephrase the question to what instrument would you grab in a fire?
yeah, that'd be the one because I'm so comfortable with it. Like it always feels good. Like it feels,
Hmm.
it's like a leather jacket.
Yeah.
You're just like, oh, yep, there you go. It fits all of the contours of it, and because it's so
An old leather jacket that you've had.
yeah, that you've had for forever. But I've got like so many of these weirdo custom ones. But
Yeah.
like, I guess if they went up in a fire, I just want to know what the tunings were. I put a little sticker for all the tunings on the back of the headstock because
Yeah.
otherwise I'll forget. Like I
Yeah.
just do it to confuse my hands. But yeah, I'd pick I'd make sure the wife and the cat were safe. But yeah, then I'd probably grab the Rick.
Yeah. You play flats on that, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, flat wound guitar strings is
Oh yeah.
huh. Well, man, that's all the questions. This has been really great.
This has been wonderful. Thanks so much, Patrick.
Thank you. I'm I'm really grateful we got to do this.
It was even better than I thought it was going to be, and I knew it was going to be good. And mostly because I do trust you. If I was having the same conversation about like, Jesus Christ, I think I'm a fraud with some jackass that I didn't know, I would be, I don't think I could have done it.
Yeah, eventually I'm going to run out of friends to interview and I have to branch into strangers, and I don't know what that's going to be like.
It's going to be so weird.
Yeah. All right. Man, I love talking to that guy. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. Thanks again for listening to the Crash and Ride podcast. Go to our Patreon page if you want to sign up to make a monthly contribution to what we're doing. Otherwise, just find us on your favorite podcast platform. We should be everywhere by the time you hear this. Now, remember, if you're in distress and you need someone to talk to and you're worried that you may harm yourself if you're having depression or dark days, you can always call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. That's 1-800-273-8255. 1-800-273-8255. I hope you can find some people in your community that you trust that you can talk to. Additionally, reach out to us if there's any way that we can help. If you have any questions or comments for the program, remember that's crashandride@protonmail.com. In the meantime, take care of yourself, be kind to yourself, and remember that loud guitars save lives. Thanks.